The diner sits at the edge of a lonely highway, a beacon of warmth in an otherwise desolate stretch of road. The soft hum of an old jukebox, the clinking of coffee cups, and the murmured conversations of the locals paint a picture of a town where everyone knows everyone. Outside, the neon sign flickers, barely holding on to life, casting a faint glow against the dusty road lined with motorcycles and old pickup trucks. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingles with a subtle aroma of grilled bacon and buttered toast, creating a homely atmosphere. Yet, despite the comfort the diner offers, there's an underlying sense of isolation. The roads are long and empty, and the town itself is nothing more than a dot on the map. Out here, far from the city, help isn't always close by. Emma Carter. The blind but fiercely independent young woman Emma Carter moves with confidence, her white cane tapping rhythmically against the wooden floorboards as she steps inside. At 24 years old, she's used to the looks people give her, some filled with pity, others with admiration. She ignores them all. Her long, dark hair is pulled into a ponytail, and her jeans and hoodie are practical, giving no indication of weakness. Despite her blindness, she has trained herself to read people through sound and intuition. She doesn't need sight to know when trouble is brewing. Jake Carter. The retired Marine living in solitude, Jake Carter's military days are long behind him, but his presence still carries the weight of a man who has seen war. Now, he lives a quiet life in a secluded cabin, only coming into town when necessary. His scarred hands and piercing gaze tell a story of battles fought, both on the battlefield and within himself. Though age has caught up with him, his reflexes remain sharp, and his protective nature towards Emma is unwavering. Maria. The diner's protective owner Maria has run this diner for over 2 decades. She's a tough but kind woman, someone who's seen drifters, troublemakers, and lost souls come and go. She treats Emma like family, watching over her like a second mother. She's seen trouble walk through her doors before, and tonight, she has a bad feeling. Tommy and Eric. The troublemaking bikers Tommy and Eric aren't from around here. Their leather jackets, heavy boots, and cocky smirks announce them before they even speak. They live for the thrill of the road, taking what they want and answering to no one. To them, Emma is just another easy mark, someone they can mess with for fun before they move on to the next town. Emma pushes the diner door open, her cane sweeping the floor ahead of her. The bell jingles, signaling her arrival. At the counter, Maria looks up and offers a warm smile. "Emma, sweetheart, your usual?" Emma nods, moving to her favorite booth near the window. She doesn't need help finding it. She's been here too many times. Across the room, Tommy nudges Eric, his lips curling into a grin. "Blind girl," he mutters. "Easy target." Eric chuckles, his eyes narrowing as he watches her. Maria catches their exchange, and her grip tightens on the coffee pot. She's seen men like them before, the kind that don't respect boundaries. She exhales slowly, already knowing tonight isn't going to end quietly. The low murmur of conversation and the steady clinking of silverware against ceramic plates fill the diner. But amidst the normal sounds of the evening, a different kind of noise begins to emerge, one laced with malice. Tommy leans back in his chair, stretching his arms as he throws a smirk toward Eric. "You ever wonder how blind people even find their way around?" He muses loudly, just enough for Emma to hear. Eric chuckles, his voice dripping with mockery. "Maybe she's got super hearing. Like a bat." Emma, seated in her booth, continues stirring her coffee, unfazed. She's heard it all before. Eric chuckles, his eyes narrowing as he watches her, a predatory gleam flickering beneath the dim diner lights. He leans in closer to Tommy, his voice low but carrying just enough weight to be heard. She doesn't even flinch. Think she's used to it? Tommy scoffs, stretching lazily in his seat. Probably. People like her, they learn to ignore the world because they ain't part of it. Maria catches their exchange, her sharp eyes darting between them as her grip tightens on the coffee pot. She's seen men like them before, the kind that don't respect boundaries, the kind that push just to see how far they can go. She exhales slowly, already knowing tonight isn't going to end quietly. The low murmur of conversation and the steady clinking of silverware against ceramic plates fill the diner. Forks scrape against half-finished meals, and the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of fresh coffee filling a mug echoes behind the counter. But amidst the normal sounds of the evening, a different kind of noise begins to emerge, one laced with malice. Tommy leans back in his chair, tilting his head toward Emma with a smirk. He's loud enough now that other patrons cast wary glances but say nothing. You ever wonder how blind people even find their way around? Eric's chuckle is sharp, his voice dripping with mockery. Maybe she's got super hearing, like a bat. Emma, seated in her booth, remains calm. She stirs her coffee, her movements unhurried, unfazed. She's heard it all before. The jeers, the whispers, the laughter, it all blends into the same meaningless noise. But Maria sees the slight tightening of Emma's jaw, the way her fingers grip the handle of her mug just a little harder. The bikers take her silence as an invitation to continue. Tommy leans forward now, elbows on the table, grinning like a wolf sizing up its prey. What do you think, sweetheart? You can hear us, right? Maria slams the coffee pot down onto the counter. Hard. The sharp clang echoes through the diner. A warning. A statement. Emma finally speaks, her voice cool and steady, loud and clear. For the first time, the bikers hesitate, just for a moment. And then Eric chuckles again, shaking his head. Feisty one. Tommy smirks. Oh yeah, I like a challenge. Maria clenches her fists. This isn't just harmless teasing anymore. This is the beginning of something dangerous. Maria, however, is not amused. Her gaze snaps to the two bikers, her tone firm. This diner doesn't tolerate disrespect. If you don't have anything decent to say, keep your mouths shut. Tommy lifts his hands in mock surrender. Whoa, calm down, lady. We're just having a little fun. Emma finally speaks, her voice even. Fun usually doesn't come at someone else's expense. Tommy and Eric exchange glances. This one has a sharp tongue, and that, to them, is a challenge. As Emma gets up to refill her coffee, she moves carefully, her cane guiding her steps. But just as she reaches for the counter, a shoulder slams into her. It's Tommy. On purpose. Emma stumbles but regains her footing, her fingers tightening around her cane. Oh, Tommy laughs, feigning innocence. Didn't see you there. Eric snickers. Yeah. Guess she didn't see you either. A few of the other customers shift uncomfortably in their seats, but no one dares to interfere. Emma straightens, her posture firm. She won't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Next time, she says, her tone sharper than a knife, try bumping into someone who can actually fight back. The amusement on Tommy's face falters for a split second before turning into something darker. Eric leans forward, resting his arms on the table. Feisty. I like that. Maria, standing behind the counter, has had enough. She slams a glass down, drawing everyone's attention. You two better pay your bill and get out before I call the sheriff. Tommy and Eric laugh, completely unfazed. Relax, lady. Tommy smirks. We're just getting to know our new friend. Emma, unbothered, reaches for her cup. She lifts it, as if to take a sip, and then she turns, accidentally spilling the hot coffee directly onto Tommy's lap. The diner goes silent. Tommy jerks back, hissing through his teeth. Eric stares, half in shock, half in amusement. Emma doesn't even flinch. Oops, she says flatly. Guess I didn't see you there. Tommy's face darkens, amusement completely gone. Now it's personal. The air in the diner turns heavy, thick with tension. Tommy pushes back his chair abruptly, making the legs scrape against the floor with an ear-piercing sound. In 2 strides, he's in front of Emma. Before she can react, his rough, calloused fingers wrap around her wrist, gripping it tight. The sudden contact sends a chill down her spine, but she refuses to show fear. You should be careful, sweetheart, Tommy whispers, his voice low and menacing. It's a dangerous world out there. People might take advantage of a helpless girl like you. Emma's jaw clenches, her fingers twitching. Helpless? She's heard that word too many times in her life. Maria starts to move from behind the counter, but Eric casually blocks her path, shaking his head. No need to get all worked up, Eric says, flashing a grin. We're just having a conversation. Emma knows no one is going to step in. Not yet. They're waiting to see what happens next. She takes a slow breath, steadying her voice. I think you're the one who should be careful, she says. Tommy chuckles, tightening his grip. Oh yeah? And why's that? Emma doesn't answer. Maria tenses, gripping the handle of the coffee pot a little tighter. She starts to step out from behind the counter, her protective instincts kicking in, but before she can make a move, Eric shifts smoothly into her path. His movements are casual, almost lazy, but there's no mistaking the intent behind them. No need to get all worked up, he says, flashing a grin, his voice dripping with faux innocence. We're just having a conversation. Maria stops, her eyes narrowing. She knows better. This isn't just conversation. It's a game, one where men like Eric and Tommy push until someone pushes back. Her gaze flickers toward Emma. The girl remains still, her head tilted slightly as if listening, not just to their words, but to their movements, their intentions. The diner is silent now. The low murmur of conversations has died down. Even the clinking of silverware against plates has ceased. Every patron is watching, but no one is stepping in. Not yet. They're waiting to see what happens next. Emma takes a slow breath, steadying her voice. She knows how men like this operate. She's encountered their type before, the kind who mistake her blindness for weakness. She exhales, calm and deliberate. I think you're the one who should be careful, she says, her voice even. Tommy chuckles, amused by her defiance. His fingers tighten around her wrist, his grip growing firm, testing. "Oh yeah," he mocks, leaning in just a little closer. His breath reeks of stale beer and arrogance. "And why's that?" Emma doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. Because outside, past the glow of the neon diner sign, past the stretch of empty parking lot and the deserted road beyond it, something shifts. A sound, faint at first, a deep, low rumble in the distance. Steady, unyielding, growing closer. Instead, she slowly reaches into her pocket. Tommy and Eric watch closely, expecting her to pull out money, a weapon, or maybe even pepper spray. Instead, she pulls out her phone. She presses a single button. A moment later, a calm but firm voice comes through the speaker. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Tommy and Eric exchange looks. The voice on the other end is deep, steady, and controlled, a man who doesn't rattle easily. Emma keeps her voice level, but there's an edge to it now. "Dad, I need you." Silence. Then, the sound of a chair scraping back on the other end of the line. A heartbeat later, Jake Carter's voice comes through once more, colder this time. "I'm on my way." Outside the diner, the night is still, until a deep, throaty roar cuts through the silence. The sound grows louder, a powerful engine tearing down the highway. Tommy and Eric glance toward the window, unimpressed. "Sounds like another biker," Eric mutters. Tommy scoffs, still rubbing the sore spot on his wrist where he had grabbed Emma. Maybe it's her grandpa coming to pick her up. The motorcycle comes to a halt, and the engine dies. Then, the diner door swings open. Jake Carter steps inside. He's not an old, frail man like the bikers had imagined. He stands tall, broad-shouldered, his movements measured and deliberate. His piercing blue eyes scan the room, cold, calculating, dangerous. The light from the diner reflects off the silver streaks in his beard, giving him the air of a man who has seen war and survived it. Tommy and Eric exchange uneasy glances. Something about him feels wrong. Not wrong like weak, but wrong like lethal. Emma doesn't have to see him to know he's there. She hears his boots click against the wooden floor, steady, unfaltering. Maria, from behind the counter, exhales in relief. "Thank God," she whispers under her breath. Jake stops a few feet from the bikers, his presence suffocating. His gaze locks onto Tommy. "You laid hands on my daughter," Jake says. His voice is low, quiet, but the weight behind it could shatter bones. The entire diner seems to hold its breath. Tommy's smirk returns, but it's thinner now, more forced. "Yeah, old man. What are you gonna do about it?" Jake doesn't react. He doesn't blink, doesn't shift his weight. He just stares, the way a lion stares at prey that hasn't realized it's already dead. Eric leans forward, grinning. "Relax. We were just having a little fun. Ain't that right, sweetheart?" Emma says nothing. She doesn't need to. Jake tilts his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Fun," he repeats. The word lingers in the air like a threat. Then, he moves. It happens faster than the eye can follow. Jake grabs Tommy's wrist, the same way Tommy had grabbed Emma's. Only this time, there's no escape. With a single fluid motion, Jake twists, A sickening pop echoes through the diner as Tommy's arm is yanked behind his back at an unnatural angle. Tommy screams, dropping to his knees. Eric lunges at Jake, aiming a wild punch at his head. Jake sidesteps effortlessly, grabbing Eric's arm in midair. A precise strike to the elbow, and Eric's entire limb goes numb. Before he can react, Jake slams him face first into a nearby table. Dishes shatter, chairs topple over. The few remaining customers scramble out of the way, watching in stunned silence. Eric groans, trying to push himself up, but Jake's boot pins him down. Tommy, still clutching his arm, staggers to his feet, rage replacing his pain. "You son of a..." Jake turns. There's no hesitation, no wasted movement. A sharp jab to Tommy's throat makes him choke and stumble back, gasping for air. His knees buckle. The fight is already over. Jake Carter never gave them a chance. The two men writhe on the ground, coughing, groaning. The bravado, gone. The arrogance, crushed. Jake steps over them, his boots stopping inches from Tommy's face. His voice is calm, but beneath it lurks something deadly. "Now," he says, "you're going to apologize to my daughter." Tommy clenches his jaw, still breathing heavily. "Screw you." Jake crouches, his presence looming over the battered man. He leans in, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you don't, I'll break something that won't heal." Tommy swallows hard. His pride wars with his survival instincts. Eric, still groaning on the floor, nods weakly. "I am sorry, man. We didn't mean nothing by it." Tommy glares at Jake, then at Emma, but he knows he has no choice. His voice shakes as he mutters, "I'm sorry." Jake doesn't move. Emma tilts her head. Didn't quite catch that. Tommy's fists clench, but his body betrays him. His shoulders slump. "I'm sorry," he says louder, his voice laced with humiliation. Jake finally straightens, the tension in the room easing slightly. He looks at Maria. "They're leaving," he says. "Now." Maria, regaining her composure, nods quickly. "You heard the man." With what little dignity they have left, Tommy and Eric stagger to their feet and stumble toward the door. Eric clutches his ribs. Tommy cradles his arm. They don't look back. Jake watches them go, his expression unreadable. Then, he finally turns to Emma. "You okay, sweetheart?" Emma smiles softly, the tension draining from her body. "I am now." Tommy and Eric stumble out of the diner, their pride in shambles. Eric, still clutching his ribs, glances over his shoulder at Jake, only to find those cold blue eyes still watching. Tommy mutters under his breath, "Let's get the hell out of here." "They're leaving," Jake says, his voice carrying a weight that leaves no room for argument. Maria, still gripping the coffee pot like a weapon, regains her composure and nods quickly. "You heard the man," she says, her voice firm. The entire diner is silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the two battered bikers. No one speaks. No one moves to help them. Tommy groans as he struggles to his feet, cradling his arm where Jake had wrenched it. His fingers tremble as he swipes at the blood trickling from his split lip. Eric follows, slower, one arm wrapped around his ribs where Jake's elbow had driven the air from his lungs. Every breath he takes is shallow and pained. Neither of them dares to make a sound as they stagger toward the door, the weight of humiliation pressing down harder than their injuries. A scraping sound echoes through the diner as Tommy kicks a fallen chair out of his way. He pauses at the threshold, as if considering a final remark, some last shred of defiance to reclaim his pride. But the moment he glances over his shoulder, he stops cold. Jake is still watching. Those piercing blue eyes, steady and unwavering, pin Tommy in place. Eric sees it too. A shudder runs through him, and he quickly averts his gaze. Tommy swallows hard, any lingering bravado dissolving under Jake's stare. His shoulders slump. "Let's get the hell out of here," he mutters under his breath. The door swings shut behind them, the jingling bell the only sound in the stunned silence that follows. For a long moment, no one moves. The tension lingers in the air, thick and heavy, before slowly beginning to dissipate, like the receding echoes of a storm. Maria exhales, placing a hand over her heart. "Remind me never to get on your bad side, Jake." Jake smirks, finally relaxing as he turns to Emma. His expression softens. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asks, his voice low, but filled with something warm. "Something safe." Emma smiles, the tension draining from her body now that it's over. The steady grip she had kept on her composure finally eases. "I am now," she says softly. Jake reaches out, gently squeezing her shoulder. No words are needed. Maria clears her throat and busies herself behind the counter, but there's a new warmth in her gaze as she glances at Emma. The rest of the diner, slowly realizing the ordeal is truly over, returns to life. Conversations resume in hushed tones. Silverware clinks against plates once more. But outside, in the darkness of the parking lot, Tommy and Eric limp to their bikes. Eric, still clutching his ribs, glances one last time at the diner. Through the window, he sees Jake, still watching. A shiver runs down his spine. Tommy doesn't bother looking back. He just climbs onto his bike, his hands trembling as he grips the handlebars. With a final, sharp rev of the engine, the two of them speed off into the night, away from the diner, away from Jake Carter, and away from the lesson they had learned the hard way. They limp toward their bikes, the other patrons still staring in stunned silence. No one says a word. No one offers help. They start their engines, the once confident roar of their motorcycles now feeling like a retreating whimper. As they speed off into the night, Maria leans against the counter, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "Remind me never to get on your bad side, Jake." Jake finally exhales, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Don't give me a reason to, Maria." She chuckles. Fair enough. The diner slowly returns to normal, the hushed whispers of the customers gradually growing louder. But something has changed. Tonight, they witnessed something they'd never forget. Jake turns back to Emma, his sharp gaze softening instantly. "You okay, sweetheart?" Emma smiles, tilting her head slightly, listening to the subtle changes in his tone. She can always tell when he's worried, even when he tries to hide it. "I am now," she says. Jake steps closer and gently ruffles her hair, the same way he used to when she was a little girl. She laughs, playfully swatting his hand away. "I knew you'd come," she murmurs. Jake lets out a quiet chuckle. "Always, sweetheart." The words are simple, but Emma hears everything in them. The love, the promise, the unwavering protection. Maria watches the moment unfold, her smirk replaced with something softer. You raised one tough girl, Jake. Jake shakes his head. She raised herself. I just made sure no one got in her way. Emma grins. I had a pretty good teacher. Jake chuckles again, but his eyes darken for just a moment. He knows the world can be cruel, and tonight was just another reminder. But Emma, she's strong. Stronger than most. And that fills him with more pride than anything else in the world. As the night settles around them, Emma leans back in her seat, a thoughtful expression on her face. What are you thinking about? Jake asks. Emma tilts her head toward him. Tonight. Jake raises a brow. What about it? She smiles. How strength isn't just about knowing how to fight. It's about knowing when to stand your ground, knowing who to trust, and knowing you don't have to fight alone. Jake studies her for a moment, then gives a slow, approving nod. Smart girl, he murmurs. Emma grins. Told you I had a good teacher. Maria wipes down the counter and chuckles. Well, next time you two decide to teach life lessons, maybe do it with a little less property damage? Jake smirks. No promises. The three of them share a laugh, the night no longer feeling so heavy. Outside, the diner sign flickers in the darkness, standing as a quiet witness to a night no one would forget, and a lesson the bikers would never ignore again. A week later, as the morning sun filters through the windows of Emma's small cabin, she hears the familiar sound of footsteps approaching her door. She doesn't need to see to know who it is. Maria's voice rings out cheerfully. Mail call. Emma chuckles, setting down her coffee. Since when did you become my personal mail carrier? Maria snickers as she hands over a thick envelope. Since I saw the return address was missing and figured it was something interesting. Emma raises an eyebrow, running her fingers over the envelope's rough edges. It's thick, too thick for a simple letter. Maria leans against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching with open curiosity. Go on, open it. I'm dying to know what mystery admirer sent you a love letter. Emma snorts. Somehow, I doubt that. Still, a flicker of unease passes through her. She's gotten mail before, sure, but never something like this. Never something without a return address. Slowly, she slides her finger under the flap and pulls out the contents. Inside, there's a stack of crisp $100 bills. A lot of them. Maria lets out a low whistle. Well, I'll be damned. Emma, however, barely notices the money. Her focus is locked on the small, folded note that came with it. She runs her fingertips over the paper before unfolding it. 3 simple words are scrawled across the page in uneven handwriting. Emma exhales, a small smirk tugging at her lips. Maria peers over her shoulder. What does it say? Emma hands her the note. As Maria reads, her eyes widen slightly before she shakes her head with a laugh. Guess they finally learned their lesson. Emma hums in agreement, setting the money aside. She isn't sure what she'll do with it yet, but one thing is clear. Tommy and Eric aren't coming back. Maria nudges her playfully. See, I told you that glare of yours could scare the devil himself. Emma chuckles, shaking her head. Wasn't my glare they were afraid of. Maria grins. Nope. But it sure made them think twice. The two of them share a quiet moment, sipping coffee as the morning sun continues to rise. The air is crisp, the world peaceful, and for the first time in a long while, Emma feels like she can finally breathe. The past still lingers, but it no longer weighs her down. Outside, the wind shifts, carrying with it the distant hum of an engine. Jake's motorcycle, no doubt coming for his usual morning visit. Emma smiles, already knowing what he'll say when he sees the envelope. But for now, she simply enjoys the quiet. The diner, the fight, the fear, it's all behind her. And somewhere out there, two men who thought they could take what they wanted now understand the price of their arrogance. Some lessons, after all, aren't just learned. They're burned into memory. Emma runs her fingers over the envelope. Unfamiliar texture. Heavy. With practiced ease, she tears it open, pulling out a folded note. Her fingers trace the words as she reads aloud. "We were wrong. We won't bother you again." Beneath it, another surprise. A thick stack of cash. Maria gasps, her eyes widening. "Well, would you look at that? Hush money?" Emma smirks, shaking her head. "More like guilt money." Maria flips through the stack. This is enough to cover the damage they caused at the diner. And then some. Emma tilts her head thoughtfully. "Guess they finally learned their lesson." Maria laughs. "Guess your dad taught it real well." Emma smiles, running her fingers over the note again. Some lessons in life come easy. Others, you have to learn the hard way. And for Tommy and Eric, this was a lesson they'd never forget.